Velvet tamarind, scientifically known as Dialium guineense, is an extraordinary West African fruit whose appearance immediately challenges expectations. Unlike the brown, elongated tamarind pods familiar to global markets, velvet tamarind develops as small, spherical, dark charcoal-colored pods covered in a fine matte skin. Inside, the pulp is bright orange, almost sunset-colored, and powdery granular. Its consistency dissolves effortlessly on the tongue, releasing a sweet acidic flavor profile that is distinct yet reminiscent of classic tamarind. The earliest anthropological mentions of velvet tamarind trace through oral records rather than major documented agricultural texts. In many regions of Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Cameroon, the tree predates commercial agriculture, existing as a forest native edible species that children historically gathered during dry seasons. Harvesting was social, families gathered fallen pods, and children cracked shells using stones or teeth. The fruit transitioned from forest presence to domestic trade organically, in open-air markets rather than plantation systems. The velvet tamarind tree grows impressively large, with domed crowns and thick, compound leaves, adaptations suited for sustaining shade in hot landscapes. In ecological studies, this species functions as a stabilizer in savanna woodland transitions. During mid-dry season periods, when forage trees shed foliage, velvet tamarind's persistence symbolized resilience and became historically connected to seasonal rhythms. Inside the fruit, the pulp is unique in biochemical behavior. It is not moist like commercial tamarind but instead a dry powder attached to the seed surface. When moisture interacts with this pulp, either saliva or water, it becomes paste-like instantly. Traditional consumption involves sucking the pulp layer until it dissolves. This physical transformation fascinated food scientists studying starch fiber behavior. The pulp contains complex carbohydrates, organic acids, a moderate presence of vitamin C, and bioactive compounds used traditionally against digestive imbalance. Medicinally, velvet tamarind occupied an important ecological pharmaceutical niche long before pharmaceutical institutions formed. Local ethnobotanical traditions prescribed it for sore throat, fever reduction, digestive stabilization, and post-illness revitalization. The pulp's acidity, mixed with sugars, created natural electrolyte replacement, especially during heat exhaustion. In Nigerian folk use, it is still considered a soft digestive laxative when consumed in high amounts due to mild osmotic effect. One of the rare qualities often overlooked is the presence of polyphenolic compounds inside the pulp layer. These compounds act as natural protectants against oxidation. Although the fruit's dry appearance suggests fragility, the pulp maintains stable organoleptic traits long after harvest. This made velvet tamarind one of the few indigenous fruits that could be preserved naturally without refrigeration. The shell acts as airtight encapsulation. When pods split, the pulp inside remains stable for several days. The seeds also occupy cultural relevance. When roasted or boiled, they transform into edible seeds comparable in nutrition to legumes. Some historical references note the use of seeds as famine period supplementary food. The seed structure led researchers to classify the plant not just by fruit identity but as a protein-supporting botanical. When analyzing velvet tamarind scientifically, researchers discovered high presence of antioxidant compounds, particularly phenolic acids. These bioactive elements correlate with antimicrobial activity. Folk applications of velvet tamarind leaf infusions in wound care align with measurable antibacterial effects, an example of traditional knowledge predating laboratory validation. Culinary use differs across regions. In Nigeria, the pulp appears in beverages, sweetened sauces, and sherbets. When combined with chili, sugar, and ginger, it becomes a widely sold schoolyard snack. This is a recurring culinary evolution. Fruits that start as seasonal forest foods often convert into street snacks, bridging urbanization and heritage. The most important anthropological characteristic of velvet tamarind is its place in seasonal memory. Fruits that ripen during dry seasons often develop symbolic value. When fresh domestic produce becomes limited, fruits that survive seasonality become markers of endurance. In rural agricultural cycles, velvet tamarind stands not as luxury fruit but as predictable sustenance. People waited specifically for its season not because it was rare, but because it punctuated environmental rhythm. Economically, velvet tamarind never globalized because its shell form does not travel efficiently in high-humidity export environments. Once the outer skin absorbs moisture, cracking becomes irregular, shortening shelf stability. Local markets handle distribution within short-distance zones. While Southeast Asian tamarind became commercialized rapidly due to syrup production and confectionery compatibility, velvet tamarind remained culturally local. Yet modern research highlights its value as a functional food. Certain food industry groups evaluate velvet tamarind for powdered beverage supplementation. The pulp dissolves instantly when introduced into liquid, allowing stable formulation for electrolyte-based drinks. In the agricultural reform sector, velvet tamarind trees receive conservation interest because their large canopy creates micro-shade ecosystems. Soil beneath the tree maintains moisture longer than exposed terrain. Wildlife species feed on the fallen pods, contributing to dispersal. The root system helps bind porous savanna soils. The name, velvet, derives from the matte, faintly dusty exterior, not literal velvet texture. The smooth dullness contrasts sharply with the bright internal color, creating visually striking dichotomy. Fruits displaying such inversion, dark shell, brilliant interior, often become culturally symbolic. In West African metaphors, crack pods represent truth hidden beneath silence. Ultimately, velvet tamarind stands as a fruit that never needed international branding or industrial elevation. It survived through taste, habit, daily convenience, and intergenerational familiarity. It represents a life pattern, simple, local, reliable. If commercial fruit markets industrialize velvet tamarind in the future, it will likely occur not through raw exports but through powdered flavor processing. But for now, velvet tamarind remains an indigenous presence, one that has fed villages, marked seasons, soothed illnesses, and sweetened childhoods. Like many culturally rooted fruits, its story survives through lived experience rather than mass distribution. It is not globally rare, but it is contextually precious.